This is a guest essay written by Adam Hummel, a lawyer in Toronto.
Let's get this out of the way. I am not here to downplay anyone's tragedy. War is ugly. Displacement is real. Suffering isn't a competition. Though if it were, the Jews would medal every century. Maybe not always gold, but sometimes a healthy bronze. I don't like seeing other people suffering, and yes, I get uncomfortable, for example, with reports about starving Palestinian children in Gaza. It is an unimaginable situation for which I am sympathetic. I want the war to end. Who doesn't? But the Palestinians hold 58 Israelis, and they must be returned home. Now I'm also tired. Tired of the word Nakba being tossed around Canadian campuses like it's a magic spell that ends all debate. It means catastrophe, they say solemnly, as if that translation is supposed to shut your mouth and make you feel guilty for being alive. Here's the truth they don't want you to say out loud, and that, respectfully, my friends with faded Peace Now stickers on their walls are probably going to be uncomfortable reading. The real Nakba, the actual undeniable catastrophe, wasn't in 1948. It was the delusion, still rampant today, that our enemies ever wanted peace. We believed them. That was our first mistake. Our community and the Israeli left, then with far more power and influence than today, saw young Palestinian children in scarves and thought, future peace partners. We sent aid. We built universities in Judea and Samaria, also known as the West Bank. We trained their police forces. We gave them a seat at the table. Hell, we built them the table. And for what? So they could build tunnels instead of towns, rockets instead of roads, paragliders instead of playgrounds. The moderate Palestinian Authority pays terrorists monthly salaries, pay for slay, that go up with the body count, and the West calls it a nuanced conflict, with a penchant for moral equivalency at every turn. Let me put this bluntly. You can't make peace with people who think your very existence is a crime. The peace process, a never-ending cycle of Jewish guilt and terrorist PR. I've gotten really into studying Israeli history recently, and the same words and locations always come up: Oslo, Camp David, Taba, road maps, Annapolis. Every few years, the Israelis and/or the quartet dusted off the same tired formula. Israel offers land, security, dignity. In return, we got rockets, murdered children, and a UN resolution blaming us for not doing more. Wash, rinse, repeat. We gave the Palestinians Gaza entirely, not a single Israeli left. The IDF pulled out. Jews expelled Jews. We even left the greenhouses behind so they could grow crops and not grievances. What did we get? An empowered Hamas, elected, celebrated, handing out candy, and now live streaming Jewish slaughter like it's an Instagram reel. Not like, but rather actual Instagram reels of atrocities against Jews. A Hamas terrorist called home on October 7th from within Israel, beaming, "Dad, I killed 10 Jews with my own hands. Dad, 10 with my own hands." His parents were filled with pride. That's their son, the light of their lives. Nakba? Let's talk about the catastrophic tragedy of Israeli parents finding their babies' cribs filled with blood, not blankets. Let's talk about the kibbutz mothers who hid in safe rooms while their children were butchered next door. These same families who lined up at the Gaza border with their car engines warm, ready to transport needy Palestinian patients to Israeli hospitals for care. Those are the people who then returned to Gaza, healthier on account of Israeli medicine, who plotted the brutal murder of their caregivers. That is a catastrophe. That is horror. And frankly, I have no desire to hear about root causes, while 58 hostages, dead and/or alive, are still being held underground, starved, beaten, raped, hanging on to life. Read about what happened on October 7th. Read about the rapes, about women having their breasts chopped off while they were being raped, or about being shot in the groin immediately afterwards. Read about the delight with which the Palestinian terrorists who infiltrated Israel killed, mutilated, burned, and maimed. Read about their joy at doing such. Read about the countless terrorist attacks emanating out of the West Bank since October 7th, including most recently the murder of Zila Gez, a 30-year-old Israeli woman who was shot to death by a Palestinian terrorist while on her way to the hospital to give birth to her son. Her newborn son remains in the hospital in critical condition. This didn't happen on October 7th, but May 14th, 2025. These are our partners in peace? But what about 1948, they say? The original sin to many is the birth of the modern state of Israel, or as the anti-Zionist poetry majors like to call it, the colonization of Palestine. Just 77 years ago, on May 14th, 1948, the modern state of Israel was established. So, let's review. For over 70 years, from the 1860s to the late 1940s, the indigenous Jewish population grew in the land of Israel, supported by the British through the Balfour Declaration, as returning to their ancestral homeland. They drained the swamps, brought foreign investment, and made the desert bloom. But the local Arab inhabitants, the neighbors, could not live with this. Despite the prosperity, despite the warmth offered by the outstretched Jewish hands, and despite the Jews even accepting the smallest possible Jewish state, through various partition plans offered by the British and the United Nations, the Arabs said no, 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 no. Basically, we refuse to have our own state if the Jews get a state of their own too. We choose an eternal displacement as long as the Jews get nothing too. Well, that's not how Jews work. After all, we have no alternative. Displacement was in the Jewish past. We supported the UN partition plan in 1947 and planned to declare a state one Shabbat evening in May 1948. 5 Arab armies declared war on the modern Jewish state literally the day it was born. We pleaded with the local Arabs to stay, to become Israeli citizens, to contribute in the upbuilding of this oasis in the desert. There was room for everyone. Yes, it is true. Some who posed an immediate threat to the state of Israel were forced out. But most Arabs who left did so because their own leaders encouraged them to. They thought the Jews would be defeated, and they'd return soon to their homes. When the war finished with an Arab victory, the defeated Jews pushed into the sea. Some Arabs stayed, and today their descendants serve in Israel's parliament, military, Supreme Court, and civil society. They do not want to live in any other country in the Middle East, because Israel is, without compare, the best country in the region for Arabs. That's not apartheid. Meanwhile, some 850,000 Jews were ethnically cleansed from Arab countries, their assets stolen, their communities destroyed. 1/3 of the population of Baghdad was Jewish. Their wealth, estimated at the equivalent of $300 million in today's economy, was stolen by the Iraqi state. They were expelled. You rarely hear about their Nakba, or even the Farhud, an outbreak of mob violence against Baghdad Jewry in June 1941, which was a turning point in the history of Jews in Iraq. At home in Canada, it would be cute if it weren't so sinister. Canadian universities hold Nakba Day events, hosted by student unions, that couldn't pass a basic history quiz if you offered them free weed and a participation ribbon. They misunderstand and misinterpret colonialism to fit a woke narrative they learned online, and allege that Jews wash whatever we can to distract from the innate evils of Zionism. Pinkwashing, greenwashing, rainbow washing, I could go on. They don keffiyehs, likely manufactured by Uyghur slave laborers in China, chant "from the river to the sea," and post infographics made by 22-year-olds who think that Winston Churchill is the cause of the West's problems. They claim they're, quote, anti-Zionist, not anti-Semitic, while defacing synagogues with graffiti and calling to globalize the Intifada, the so-called uprising that slaughtered thousands of Israelis, most of them Jewish civilians. but freedom of expression, right? Paging McGill University, paging Concordia University, paging York University, my alma mater, paging the University of Toronto. Wrong. When one group's quote-unquote freedom includes chanting for the eradication of another, that's not protest. That's incitement. No context is required. The truth hurts. And so, the fantasy of the peace process is a comforting lie we told ourselves. I think it let us feel morally superior while our enemies grew stronger, better armed, and more shameless. We believed in a future they never wanted. They didn't dream of a state. They dreamed of conquest. And instead of taking them at their word, we clung to this imaginary world where dialogue was going to save us. And it breaks my heart. I actually distinctly remember sitting on my grandmother's couch with her on September 13th, 1993, when I was just 8 years old, watching CNN. I was holding her hand as she squeezed mine, elated that Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was shaking hands with Palestine Liberation Organization Chairman Yasser Arafat, allegedly welcoming in a new era of peace. She had tears of joy in her eyes and told me that peace would soon come to the land of Israel. She believed it, and I believed her. And boy, am I glad that she was not around to witness the atrocities of October 7th, the true zeal and intentions behind Arafat's fake overtures, what he actually said in Arabic to his people, laid bare for the world to see. Too bad the world blamed and still blames the Jews. Let's be honest. The real Nakba was Jewish naivety. So, what now? Now we get real. No more fairy tales. No more moral gymnastics to justify self-erasure. No more comparing Hamas to a quote-unquote resistance movement. Or quoting Palestinian-American academic Edward Said while kibbutz families bury their dead. No more giving the benefit of the doubt or thinking that replacing textbooks alone will change the outlook of a generation. I recently attended a talk by Canadian-Israeli journalist Maddie Friedman, who said that what left-wing and right-wing means in Israel is far different than what those terms mean in America or Canada. In Israel, it basically refers to your approach to the two-state solution. You're left-wing if you're pro, and you're right-wing if you're anti, more or less. But today, in a post-October 7th world, surely that entire paradigm has flipped on its head. How many Israelis still believe in peace with the Palestinians? How many think a Palestinian state, one that can live alongside the Jewish state in peace, without the Jews always having to look over their shoulders, is possible today? Few, if any, and Palestinian leadership did this to themselves. So, how do you now define left versus right in Israel? What is the new paradigm? Are you left-wing if you're anti-Netanyahu? Are you right-wing if you want to see the Gaza war continue? Things have changed, but what hasn't changed is this fundamental truth. Israel didn't create the Nakba. It created a future, a refuge, a miracle. It gave the Jewish people a spine, a language, and an army. And I'm okay if that offends your political sensibilities. I am not, frankly, saying anything overly controversial if you open your eyes and see the world today for what it is. Beware of Greeks bearing gifts, they once said. You may remind me to consider the Abraham Accords, but we must approach any such overtures with caution. Not every member of those accords is the same. Not all peace is a warm peace. Just look at Israel's cold peace with Egypt. Yes, today you are likely perfectly safe as an Israeli or Jew walking through the souk in Dubai. But watch your back in Khartoum. And if Syria joins, don't go exploring the Damascus Bazaar just yet. We're done apologizing. In our history, we have shed plenty of tears on catastrophes brought upon us. But unlike others, we don't immortalize them in protest signs. We build, we fight, we survive. That's our story. And in the meantime, Israel has averted countless terror attacks on the streets of Western Europe and likely North America. It has given the world technological marvels, medical enhancements, and has removed the risk of Syrian and Iraqi nuclear weapons. It ships medical professionals around the world to help in conflict zones, helps develop agricultural projects in Africa and India to feed millions, perhaps even billions, and has never stopped contributing to making the world a better place. You're welcome, world. So go ahead, shout Nakba from your arts faculty megaphone. But we're done pretending we don't know what it really means.